How did you get your mom to apologize for being too strict? After the divorce, my mom turned our house into a war zone. No contact with dad, no exceptions, no matter what. She blocked his number on my phone, shredded any mail with his handwriting before I could see it, told the school office to call the cops if he showed up. Every day at lunch, I'd sit with kids scheduling their dad weekends while I pretended mine was just really busy with work. They'd complain about having two houses, two sets of rules, double the chores. I wanted to throw my sandwich at them, like at least they had two houses. Then came my 14th birthday. I got a letter in the mail and recognized dad's messy handwriting immediately. Happy 14th birthday, Isabella. I hope you still like chocolate cake. I didn't have time to read the rest because mom snatched it from my hands and tore it into pieces right in front of me. Nothing from him enters this house. Her face was twisted with so much hate it scared me. That's when grandma, on my mom's side, stepped in. During her weekly visits, she'd casually mention things about dad. He moved closer to us, only 20 minutes away now. He asks about you constantly. Still has that photo of you at the beach on his desk. One day she grabbed my hand and made me repeat his phone number over and over until I had it memorized. Just in case, she whispered. I started testing boundaries in small ways. Changed my profile picture on Instagram to a photo of me and dad just to see if mom would notice. She didn't, so I got bolder. I made a fake email account and sent dad a message. It's me. I'm okay. Mom doesn't know. He responded in 12 seconds, like he'd been waiting by his computer for 2 years. I was too nervous to respond. The closest I came to full rebellion was at Mia's sleepover. Everyone was passed out from too much pizza. I didn't just stare at dad's number. I called it and heard his voice for the first time in years. Hello? My throat closed up. I couldn't speak. Hello? Is someone there? 10 seconds of silence. Then quietly. Isabella? Baby, is that you? I hung up and sobbed into the pillow until I threw up. He knew. Somehow he knew it was me. Then everything changed on a random Wednesday in March. I was in history class when the principal's assistant pulled me out. There's been an accident, she said, and her voice cracked. Your mom's car was hit by a drunk driver. She's at the hospital. The drive there felt like hours. I kept thinking about our fight that morning, how the last thing I'd said to her was, I hate you. When I got to the emergency room, a doctor was waiting for me. His scrubs had blood on them. Your mother has internal bleeding. We have a 15-minute window to get her into surgery or she won't make it. We need consent from an authorized adult now. I called grandma 17 times. No answer. Book club, of course. Each ring felt like a year of my life. That's when I remembered the number hidden in my phone case. My fingers trembled as I peeled back the rubber and saw those 10 digits. Within 20 minutes, dad burst through the hospital doors looking panicked. The nurse's face flooded with relief. Mr. Smith, you're still listed as next of kin on her insurance. We need consent for emergency surgery immediately. It was the first time I'd seen him in 2 years. He looked older, grayer. We sat in that waiting room for 4 hours. He bought me vending machine snacks and held my hand when I cried. Neither of us said it, but we both knew. Mom's hate almost killed her. After 8 hours, the doctor came out into the waiting room with tired eyes. Another hour without treatment could have been fatal. Only the emergency surgery saved her. I held mom's hand while she was still unconscious. It felt so small. Dad stood in the doorway, afraid to come closer. Mom's first word when she woke up wasn't even my name. It was Pedro, like she thought she was dreaming. The nurse chimed in. Your husband was incredible. He knew all your medications, your blood type, even that surgery you had 10 years ago. That information saved your life. Mom's face crumpled. He's not my... She stopped, looked at dad, really looked at him for the first time in 2 years. Yeah, he is pretty great. That's when the doors burst open. A woman I didn't recognize ran in. Pedro, your location said hospital and you weren't picking up your phone and... She saw my dad holding my mom's hand and froze like a deer in headlights. Is this Isabella? She knew my name. The daughter you cry about every night? Dad went white. Lisa? And this is the ex who won't let you see her? Her voice cracked. My eyes glanced over to the huge engagement ring on her finger. Mom's monitors started beeping faster. The nurse rushed in and checked the monitors while pushing buttons on the machine that was making all the noise. She looked at the three of us standing around mom's bed and her face got serious. I need everyone except immediate family to step outside, please. Lisa's mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but dad touched her arm and shook his head. She grabbed her purse and walked out without looking back at any of us. The nurse adjusted mom's IV and checked her blood pressure again before leaving us alone. Mom started crying then, but it wasn't the angry crying I was used to seeing when dad came up. These were tired tears that just rolled down her face without her even trying to wipe them away. She looked at dad, who was still standing by her bed. Are you really getting married? Dad just nodded without saying anything else or trying to explain why he hadn't told us. Mom turned to look at me and her voice was shaky. I'm sorry about your birthday letter. I was scared of losing you too. I squeezed her hand but told her I understood why she did it, but that didn't make it okay. She actually nodded and agreed with me instead of getting defensive like she usually did when I challenged her about anything. The doctor came in carrying a clipboard and started explaining mom's recovery plan. She had internal injuries that would take at least 6 weeks to heal properly, and she'd need help at home with basic tasks. Mom's face went pale when she realized she couldn't do this alone. Dad cleared his throat and offered to help drive me to the school and activities since he lived 20 minutes away now. Mom stared at the ceiling for a long time before agreeing, but she had conditions. He had to text before coming over, no surprise visits, and absolutely no bringing Lisa to our house. Dad agreed immediately without even hesitating, like he was just grateful to be included at all. The pain medication finally kicked in, and mom's eyes started closing. Dad and I went down to the hospital cafeteria to get real food for the first time since I'd gotten pulled out of history class. He bought us both sandwiches and chips, and we found a table in the corner away from other people. While we ate, he explained that Lisa hadn't meant to burst in like that. She'd gotten worried when he didn't answer his phone for hours, and tracked his location to the hospital thinking something happened to him. I put my sandwich down and asked him straight up why he never fought harder to see me after the divorce. Why did he just accept mom's rules without trying to change them? He rubbed his face with both hands before answering. His lawyer had told him that fighting in court would traumatize me more than the divorce already had. Now he wondered if that was the wrong choice. We threw away our trash and walked back to Mom's room. She was awake and looking around frantically when we walked in. Her whole body relaxed when she saw me with Dad. It was the first time in 2 years she hadn't looked angry at the sight of him. She'd woken up alone and panicked that we'd left her there. Dad pulled a chair closer to her bed and I sat on the other side holding her hand. That's when Grandma finally showed up, still wearing her book club name tag. She wasn't even surprised to see Dad sitting there. Mom's eyes got wide when Grandma walked over and hugged Dad first before coming to check on her. Turns out Grandma had been updating Dad about us for months through text messages and phone calls. Mom looked betrayed, but she was too tired and medicated to fight about it. Grandma just shrugged and said someone had to be the adult in this situation. The next morning, a social worker came to Mom's room with a bunch of forms. She needed to make sure Mom had adequate support at home before the hospital would discharge her. Mom had to admit that Dad would be helping with transportation and household tasks during her recovery. The social worker nodded and pulled out another paper. She suggested family counseling to help navigate this transition and gave us a list of therapists who worked specifically with divorced families going through reunification. Mom took the paper without arguing, which shocked both Dad and me. The social worker explained that the accident and recovery period could be an opportunity to establish healthier co-parenting patterns. She'd seen situations like ours before where a crisis forced families to work together. Dad asked if he could have a copy of the therapist list too, and the social worker printed him one. Mom watched him fold it carefully and put it in his wallet. Her face was hard to read, but she didn't look angry anymore, just tired and maybe a little sad. The social worker left after making sure we understood all the discharge requirements and follow-up appointments Mom would need. Dad started making a list on his phone of all the dates and times so he could arrange his work schedule. Mom watched him typing and asked if Lisa would be okay with him spending so much time helping us. Dad said Lisa understood this was about me, and that came first. Mom closed her eyes and nodded slightly like she was accepting something she'd been fighting against for 2 years. 2 days later, the discharge nurse wheeled Mom out to the parking lot while I carried a plastic bag full of her medications and papers from the hospital. I wonder why Mom kept Dad listed as next of kin on her insurance after all that rage and cutting him off completely. That detail seems odd when she wouldn't even let him send birthday cards. Dad's car was already waiting by the curb and he jumped out to help Mom stand up from the wheelchair. She winced when she tried to lift herself, and Dad caught her arm to steady her. The nurse showed him how to support her weight without hurting her ribs, and he nodded like he was memorizing every word. I climbed into the back seat with the medication bag while Dad helped Mom into the front passenger seat. He adjusted the seat back so she could lean without putting pressure on her stitches. The drive home took 20 minutes, and Mom stayed quiet, except for little gasps when we hit bumps in the road. When we turned onto our street, Mom pointed at our driveway and told Dad to pull all the way in instead of parking on the street like he used to do before the divorce. Dad carried Mom's hospital bag while I unlocked the front door, and he helped her walk inside step by step. He knew exactly where to guide her to the couch and remembered where she liked the throw pillows positioned behind her back. Mom sank into the cushions and closed her eyes while Dad checked the kitchen and found it basically empty, except for some old cereal and expired milk. He offered to go grocery shopping and asked what she needed, but instead of refusing like I expected, Mom actually gave him a list. She told him where to find her grocery store loyalty card in her purse and which brand of bread to buy. While Dad was gone, Mom asked me to bring her phone from the kitchen counter where it had been charging. Her hands shook a little as she scrolled through her contacts and found Dad's blocked number. She stared at it for a long time before pressing the unblock button, and I heard her whisper that it was just for emergencies. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize, and when I opened it, I saw it was from Lisa apologizing for how she acted at the hospital. She said she was out of line and wanted to make things right between us, but I didn't know what to say to the woman who was marrying my dad, so I just left it on read. An hour later, Dad came back carrying 6 grocery bags plus a gallon of mint chocolate chip ice cream that definitely wasn't on Mom's list. Mom actually smiled a tiny bit when she saw the ice cream because it was her favorite flavor, and Dad remembered even after 2 years. He put everything away in the exact spots where things had always gone, like the cereal on the second shelf and the pasta in the cabinet next to the stove. That night, I woke up to the sound of Mom crying in her bedroom, and I knocked softly before going in to check on her. She was sitting up in bed holding her side where the stitches were, and tears were running down her face. She admitted she was scared about being weak and not being able to take care of herself or me. I sat on the edge of her bed and reminded her that Dad literally saved her life by showing up at the hospital when we needed him. I told her maybe being vulnerable wasn't the worst thing in the world, and she could let people help her for once. She squeezed my hand and nodded, but I could tell she was still scared of losing control. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Dad asking if it was okay to pick me up for school in 15 minutes. He was following Mom's rules perfectly by texting first, instead of just showing up like he might have wanted to. Mom watched from the living room window as I got into Dad's car, and I noticed she wasn't hiding behind the curtain like she used to do when she thought I wasn't looking. The drive to the school was quiet, except for Dad asking if I'd eaten breakfast and making sure I had lunch money. At the school, I tried to focus on my classes, but my guidance counselor pulled me out of third period math to check how I was handling everything. I sat in her office and suddenly started crying when I told her about Lisa and the engagement ring and how Dad had this whole other life now. She handed me tissues and suggested I might benefit from seeing a therapist who specialized in helping kids deal with divorce and family changes. She gave me a card with a therapist's number and said she could help set up the appointment if my parents agreed. After school, Dad was waiting in the pickup line and asked if I wanted to see his apartment before he took me home. I made him promise Lisa wouldn't be there, and he said she was at work until 6, so we'd have plenty of time. The drive to his apartment took about 20 minutes, and it was in a nice complex with a pool and a playground, even though there weren't many kids around. His apartment was on the second floor, and when he unlocked the door, I could smell coffee, and something that reminded me of our old house. The living room was small but clean, with a couch and a TV and pictures on the coffee table, including one of me at my 6th grade graduation. He led me down down a short hallway and opened a door to show me a bedroom painted in my favorite shade of purple, with a white desk and a bookshelf already filled with some books. The bed had a comforter with stars on it like the one I'd wanted for my birthday 2 years ago, but Mom said was too expensive. On the walls were pictures of us from before the divorce, including one from the beach trip where I caught my first fish, and another from when we built that terrible snowman. He'd been preparing this room for 2 years, just waiting and hoping that someday I'd be allowed to visit him again. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the room while Dad stood in the doorway watching me. The drive back home was quiet, and when we got there, Mom was still on the couch where we'd left her. I showed her the picture on my phone, expecting her face to get all tight and angry, but instead her eyes just got wet. "It's nice," she said real soft. "I always knew he'd never stop loving you, even when I made it impossible for him to show it." That made my chest feel weird and heavy. 3 days later, Mom and I went to our first therapy appointment together at this office building downtown. The therapist was this older woman with gray hair who had us sit on opposite ends of a couch. She asked Mom to talk about the accident and what happened after. Mom's hands kept twisting in her lap as she talked about being scared when she woke up and saw Pedro there. Then she said something that surprised me. "I thought I was protecting Isabella from getting disappointed by him, but I think I was also punishing him through her." The therapist nodded and wrote something down while I stared at Mom. We talked for the whole hour about how the accident changed things and how we both felt about Dad being back in our lives. A week later, I was doing homework at the kitchen table when Mom suddenly grabbed her stomach and ran to the bathroom. I heard her throwing up, and when she came out, her face was all sweaty and pale. She said her chest felt tight and her heart was racing weird. I called 911 and they sent an ambulance right away. The paramedics checked her vitals and said we needed to go to the emergency room because it looked like a bad reaction to one of her new medications. I texted Dad from the ambulance without even thinking about it. By the time they got Mom into a room at the hospital, Dad was already there in the waiting area. When the nurse said I could go back and see Mom, I asked if Dad could come too. Mom saw him walk in behind me, and instead of looking mad, she actually looked relieved. The emergency room doctor came in and examined Mom, then looked at all her medications. He said sometimes the pain meds and antibiotics could interact badly and make people really sick. He adjusted the doses and gave her something for the nausea. "You're lucky to have such a strong support system," he told Mom while looking at both Dad and me. Mom glanced at Dad and didn't correct the doctor about them not being married anymore, which felt like something had shifted again. We stayed at the hospital for 4 hours while they monitored Mom and made sure the new medication doses were working. Dad went and got us food from the cafeteria, and we all ate together in Mom's room. 2 days later, Grandma came over to check on Mom and offered to stay the night. "Why don't you let Pedro take Isabella to dinner?" she suggested. "They haven't had any real time together in 2 years." Mom tensed up on the couch, but then took a deep breath. "Okay, but Isabella needs to text me every hour so I know she's safe." I promised I would, and Dad picked me up at 6. We went to this Italian place we used to go to before the divorce. I texted Mom a picture of the menu right when we sat down. Dad ordered the same thing he always used to get, and I got my favorite pasta. While we waited for the food, he started telling me about Lisa. He said they met at this support group for divorced parents who couldn't see their kids. She'd been through something similar with her ex-husband keeping her son away. She kept telling me to fight harder for visitation, but I was scared it would make things worse for you, he said. He explained how Lisa had been there when he cried on your birthday and Christmas and all the days he missed. I realized she wasn't some evil person trying to replace Mom, but just someone who understood what Dad was going through. An hour into dinner, I texted Mom again with a picture of my pasta. Dad showed me pictures on his phone of him and Lisa at different places, and I could see how happy he looked. Not the fake happy, but real happy, like before everything fell apart. When he dropped me off at home, I sat in my room for a while thinking about Lisa. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to the number she'd texted me from after the hospital incident. "We should talk, but not at Dad's place or my house. Can we meet somewhere neutral?" She responded in less than a minute, suggesting a coffee shop near my school. We agreed to meet there the next day after my last class. I told Mom I'd be late coming home because I was meeting Lisa, and she just nodded without arguing. The way Dad remembered exactly where Mom liked her pillows and which shelf the cereal goes on makes me wonder if he's been holding on to all these tiny details for 2 whole years, hoping he'd need them again someday. The coffee shop was pretty empty when I got there, and Lisa was already sitting at a corner table. She stood up when she saw me, and we both just stood there for a second not knowing what to do. I sat down, and she pushed a hot chocolate across the table toward me. "Your dad said you like hot chocolate," she said. We sat there quiet for a minute before she started talking. She explained how she'd reacted so bad at the hospital because she'd been listening to Dad talk about me for almost 2 years. "Every time he talks about you, he ends up crying," she said. "I've watched him look at your pictures and wonder what you're doing and if you're okay." She said when she saw Mom at the hospital, something just snapped because Mom was the reason Dad was so sad all the time. She pulled out her phone and started showing me text messages from Dad over the past 2 years. There were hundreds of them all about me. Messages on my birthday saying he wondered if I still liked chocolate cake. Texts at Christmas asking if she thought I'd kept the soccer ball he gave me 3 years ago. Messages during soccer season wondering if I still played and if I'd made the team. One from last month that just said, "I miss my daughter so much it physically hurts." I felt my throat get tight reading all of them. Lisa kept scrolling, showing me more messages about Dad wondering if I was doing okay in the school and if I still liked to read and if I'd grown taller. I realized he never stopped being my dad even when Mom tried to make him disappear from my life. Lisa put her phone away and looked at me. "I know this is weird and hard, and I'm not trying to be your mom or anything like that." I took a sip of the hot chocolate to give myself time to think. Then I told her I couldn't promise to be okay with their engagement right away because everything was happening really fast. But I said I was willing to try if she could respect our boundaries and not push herself into my life before I was ready. She nodded really fast and promised she wouldn't try to force anything. "I just want your dad to be happy, and you're the biggest part of that," she said. We finished our drinks and she offered to drive me home, but I said I'd walk because I needed to think about everything. The walk home took took 20 minutes, and my head felt like it was going to explode from all the stuff Lisa had shown me. When I got to our front door, I stood there for a second before going inside. Mom was on the couch with her leg propped up and the TV on, but she wasn't really watching it. She looked up when I walked in, and I could tell she'd been waiting for me to get back. I sat down in the chair across from her and told her about meeting Lisa at the coffee shop. I explained how Lisa had shown me all those text messages from Dad over the past 2 years. Mom's face did this weird thing where it looked like she was trying not to cry and trying not to get mad at the same time. Then she asked me if Lisa seemed like she was good for Dad. Not in a mean way, but like she actually wanted to know. I told her Lisa seemed to really care about Dad and understood what he'd been going through. Mom nodded and looked back at the TV, but I could see her hands were shaking a little. The next morning, Mom had her regular therapy appointment, and I went with her like usual since she still couldn't drive. The therapist asked how things were going with Dad being back in the picture, and Mom told her about the visits and me meeting Lisa. Then the therapist suggested we should have a session with both Mom and Dad to figure out rules for co-parenting now that they were talking again. Mom's whole body got tense, and she started to say no, but then stopped herself. She looked at me and then back at the therapist and said it was probably something they should have done a long time ago. The therapist scheduled it for the following week, and I texted Dad right there in the office to let him know. 3 days later, we were all sitting in the therapist's office, and you could cut the tension with a knife. Dad sat in the chair furthest from Mom, and I sat between them on the couch. The therapist started by having them each say what they wanted out of the session without interrupting each other. Mom went first and said she wanted clear boundaries and for Dad to respect that she was still recovering. Dad said he just wanted to be able to see me regularly without it being a fight every time. The therapist helped them work out a schedule where Dad would come to our house twice a week while Mom was still recovering. They agreed on Tuesdays and Thursdays after school for 2 hours each time. Mom insisted she had to be in the house during the visits at first, and Dad agreed without arguing. The therapist kept bringing them back to focusing on what was best for me instead of their own anger at each other. By the end of the hour, they had a written agreement about the visits, and both seemed relieved to have clear rules. That Tuesday was Dad's first official visit under the new agreement. He showed up exactly at 4 o'clock with a bag of groceries to make dinner. Mom planted herself in the living room with a book while Dad and I went to the kitchen. She was close enough to hear everything, but she didn't interrupt or make comments. Dad made spaghetti while I sat at the counter and told him about school. Every few minutes, I'd glance at Mom and she'd be turning pages in her book, but I could tell she wasn't really reading. When the food was ready, Dad made 3 plates and brought one to Mom without saying anything. She took it and actually said thanks. We ate in the kitchen while Mom stayed in the living room, but it wasn't as awkward as I thought it would be. After a few visits like this, Mom started going to her room when Dad came over. She'd say hi when he arrived and then go upstairs with her laptop or a book. The first time she did it, Dad looked shocked. I think he kept expecting her to come back down and check on us, but she didn't. We actually got to talk without feeling like we were being watched. The therapist said it was a huge step at our next session, and Mom looked proud of herself for managing it. 3 weeks into her recovery, Mom decided she felt good enough to do laundry by herself. I was at the school and Dad was at work. She carried the basket down to the basement and must have twisted wrong because she fell on the stairs. The neighbor heard her screaming and called 911. I got pulled out of math class and Dad met us at the hospital. The doctor said she'd pulled the muscles that were still healing and set her recovery back by at least 2 weeks. Mom was crying from frustration more than pain. Dad rearranged his work schedule that day without anyone asking him to. He told his boss he needed to work from home more to help with family stuff. When he told Mom, she just nodded and said okay, instead of fighting about it. That night, I woke up screaming from a nightmare where both my parents died in a car crash. I couldn't breathe and felt like I was going to throw up. Mom tried to come to my room but couldn't make it up the stairs fast with her injury. I had 3 more nightmares that week and started being scared to fall asleep. Mom made me an appointment with my own therapist who explained it was normal after what happened with Mom's accident. She taught me breathing exercises and gave me stuff to do when I woke up panicked. The next Thursday when Dad came over, he seemed nervous about something. After dinner while we were cleaning up, he asked if I wanted to come to his wedding in 3 months. He said it really fast and then added that there was no pressure and he'd understand if I couldn't do it. I felt my stomach drop because I hadn't really thought about the wedding being real. I told him I needed time to think about it and he said that was totally fine and changed the subject. Mom was upstairs, but I know she heard because later that night she came to my room. She sat on my bed and told me I should go to the wedding if I wanted to. She said it would be hypocritical of her to be upset since she was the one who kept us apart all this time. Her voice was steady, but I could see she was trying really hard to be the bigger person. The next day, Grandma came over for her regular visit and dropped a bomb on us. She'd been secretly talking to Dad's parents, who I hadn't seen since the divorce. She said they'd been asking about me for 2 years, but respected Mom's wishes to stay away. They wanted to reconnect, but only if Mom was okay with it. Mom looked at Grandma like she'd been betrayed, but then her face just got tired looking. She said she'd think about it. 3 days later, Mom called Dad's parents herself and told them they could visit. I watched her dial the number with shaky hands and heard her voice crack when she said hello. She kept the call short, but when she hung up, her eyes were wet. Dad's parents showed up at his apartment the next Saturday, and I hadn't seen them in 2 years. They both looked older, and my grandpa's hair was completely white now. My grandma grabbed me the second I walked in and wouldn't let go for like 5 minutes. She kept touching my face and saying how tall I'd gotten. They had 2 huge bags from Target filled with wrapped presents. Birthday presents from the 2 birthdays I'd missed and Christmas gifts they'd been saving. Each one had a tag with the year on it. I opened them while they watched and found clothes that were way too small now and toys I'd outgrown, but I acted happy anyway. My grandma had kept a photo album of pictures Dad sent them of me from before the divorce, and we looked through it together. Dad made lunch and we ate sandwiches while they asked me about school and friends and what I liked now. They were careful not to mention Mom at all. When they left, my grandma slipped me a $100 bill and whispered that there was more where that came from. The mediation session happened 2 weeks later at the courthouse downtown. Lisa, keeping all those texts from Dad about wondering if I still liked chocolate cake and play soccer, seemed Seems really convenient timing to show them now. She just happens to have 2 years worth saved and organized to scroll through at their first meeting. Makes me wonder if she planned this whole emotional moment carefully beforehand. Mom wore her nice black pants and Dad showed up in the suit he used to wear to church. The mediator was this older woman with glasses who had us sit at a round table. She had papers spread out everywhere and kept writing notes while Mom and Dad talked. Mom said she wanted me safe and Dad said he understood. Dad said he wanted regular time with me and Mom nodded. They went back and forth about schedules and pickup times and who would handle what. The mediator helped them figure out alternating weekends starting Friday after school until Sunday night. Dad also got Tuesday and Thursday dinners from 5 to 8. Mom wanted right of first refusal if Dad couldn't take me on his weekend. Dad agreed to everything Mom asked for. They both signed the papers without arguing, and the mediator said she'd never seen divorced parents work together so well. 3 days after that, a package showed up at our door addressed to Mom. Inside was a soft blanket and fuzzy socks, and 3 books Mom had mentioned wanting to read. The note just said Lisa's name, and that she hoped Mom felt better soon. Mom stared at the note for a long time, then put the socks on. She used the blanket every night on the couch and actually read one of the books. She never said thank you, but she didn't throw the stuff away either. 6 weeks after the accident, Mom went back to the doctor for her final checkup. He did x-rays and checked her reflexes and said she was completely healed. Mom could drive again and go back to work and do everything normal. That meant our temporary setup had to become permanent. The lawyer came to our house with official custody papers that matched what they'd agreed to in mediation. Mom and Dad both signed in front of a notary the lawyer brought. Dad's hand shook a little when he signed. Mom filed the papers away in the folder where she kept important stuff. That Friday was my first overnight at Dad's apartment. He picked me up after school and I had my backpack plus a duffel bag with clothes and my toothbrush. His apartment smelled like tacos when we walked in. He'd made my favorite dinner with the hard shells I liked and everything set up on the counter to make them myself. He'd bought 5 different kinds of soda and 3 types of chips and the cookies I used to beg Mom for at the store. My room had new sheets with stars on them and he'd put up string lights around the window. We ate dinner and watched a movie I'd been wanting to see. He let me pick everything and didn't complain when I wanted to watch it with subtitles on. Lisa wasn't there and Dad said she was staying at her place all weekend to give us space. I found out later she'd helped him pick out the sheets and snacks. We stayed up until midnight just talking and eating junk food. The next morning, Dad made pancakes with chocolate chips and let me have 4 pieces of bacon. We went to the park and threw a football around even though neither of us was good at it. That night, we ordered pizza and played board games until I fell asleep on the couch. Sunday morning came too fast and Dad drove me home at exactly 6 like they'd agreed. Mom was waiting on the porch when we pulled up. She hugged me and asked if I had fun but didn't ask for details. I could tell she wanted to know everything but was trying not to be nosy. Her hands kept fidgeting with her coffee mug. She'd cleaned my room while I was gone and done all my laundry. I hugged her extra tight and told her I missed her, which was true. She held on longer than normal. 2 weeks later, Dad texted asking if I wanted to help him pick clothes for his wedding. He said he needed a new shirt and tie and didn't know what looked good. I said yes, and we went to the mall the next Saturday. He tried on like 10 different shirts and kept asking if they made him look old. We found a light blue one that matched his eyes. The tie took forever because he wanted something nice but not too fancy. We ended up with a silver one that had tiny dots on it. He bought me a pretzel and we sat in the food court talking about the wedding. He said it would be small with just family and close friends. He asked if I was sure I was okay with him getting married and I told him I wanted him happy. During my next therapy session, the therapist had me write down all the things I wanted to tell my parents about the divorce. It took 3 sessions to get it all out. She helped me organize it into a letter that made sense. The next week, both my parents came to the session. I sat between them on the couch and read the letter out loud. I told them how scared I was when they fought and how I felt like I had to pick sides. I told them about crying at the school and throwing up at Mia's house and having nightmares about them dying. I told them how I used to wish they'd get back together, but now I just wanted them both happy, even if that meant apart. Mom cried first, then Dad started crying too. They both said they were sorry and that they never meant to hurt me. Mom started going to physical therapy twice a week for her back. After the 3rd week, she mentioned this guy who was there for his knee. She said his name was David, and he was funny. The next week, she said they got coffee after therapy. The week after that, she asked if I'd be okay with her going on a real date with him. I told her she should go and that she deserved to be happy like Dad. She hugged me and said I was the best kid ever. David picked her up the next Friday, and she wore the dress she saved for special things. 2 weeks before Dad's wedding, I made my decision. I waited until Mom and I were watching TV together. I told her I wanted to go to Dad's wedding. She put the TV on mute and looked at me for a long time. Then she pulled me close and said she was proud of me for having such a big heart. I could see tears in her eyes, but she kept smiling. She said love wasn't about keeping score and that supporting Dad was the right thing to do. I texted Dad the next morning that I'd come to his wedding and my phone rang before I could even put it down. He was talking so fast I could barely understand him, but I heard him say it would be small and I could leave whenever I wanted, and there was no pressure at all. His voice kept cracking like he might cry, which made me tear up too. Within 5 minutes, Lisa texted me a whole paragraph about how happy this made them and how I didn't have to do anything I wasn't comfortable with and she'd make sure there was a quiet room if I needed space. I screenshot both messages to show my therapist later because they felt important to remember. The morning of the wedding, Mom helped me pick out what to wear, even though her hands shook a little while she zipped up my dress. She drove me there herself and squeezed my hand 3 times before I got out of the car, which was our secret code for I love you. The ceremony was in this small garden with maybe 30 people total, and Dad's face lit up when he saw me walk in. I sat in the 2nd row next to Grandma, who held my hand the whole time. Dad kept looking back at me during the vows like he couldn't believe I was really there. Lisa looked beautiful in this simple white dress, and when they kissed, everyone clapped and I did too, even though my chest felt tight. At the reception, I stayed for the cake cutting and the first dance, and Dad introduced me to some of his work friends I'd never met. Lisa came over once to thank me for being being there but didn't push for more conversation, which I appreciated. After an hour, I texted Mom that I was ready, and she was there in 10 minutes just like she promised. Dad and Lisa both walked me to the car and hugged me, and Dad whispered that this meant everything to him. Mom was already waiting with my favorite ice cream in the back seat, and we drove home without her asking a single question about the ceremony. We changed into pajamas and watched 3 Disney movies in a row while eating ice cream straight from the container. She rubbed my back during the sad parts, and we quoted the funny lines together like we used to when I was little. That night, she tucked me in for the first time in years and told me she was proud of me. Over the next few weeks, everything started falling into a pattern that actually worked. I spent every other weekend at Dad's apartment and had dinner with him on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Mom drove me there the first few times to show she was okay with it, and Dad always had me home exactly on time. We all kept going to therapy separately, and sometimes together when the therapist thought it would help. The angry feeling in my stomach that had been there for 2 years started getting smaller and smaller until some days I forgot it was ever there. 3 months after the accident, I had the lead in the school play, and for the first time, both my parents would be in the audience. Mom sat on the left side with Grandma, and Dad sat on the right side with Lisa, but when I came on stage, they all waved at the same time. During intermission, I peeked out and saw them actually talking to each other by the concession stand, not fighting or anything, just talking like normal people. After the show, they all waited for me in the lobby and took turns hugging me and telling me how great I was. Dad took pictures of me with Mom, and then Mom took pictures of me with Dad and Lisa, and nobody made it weird. We even all walked to the parking lot together, and Dad told Mom about this funny thing that happened at his work, and she actually laughed. 2 weeks later, Grandma decided to throw me a birthday dinner at her house and invited everyone, including Dad and Lisa. Mom helped Grandma cook while Dad set the table, and Lisa arranged the flowers someone brought. They sat at opposite ends of the table, but everyone focused on me and telling embarrassing stories about when I was a baby. Dad gave me a necklace with my birthstone, and Mom gave me concert tickets, and they both smiled when I thanked them. Grandma made my favorite chocolate cake, and everyone sang happy birthday, even though nobody was quite on the same note. Lisa picking out those exact gifts for Mom after the accident shows she really paid attention to what Mom needed. How did she know about the books Mom wanted to read? After dinner, Mom and Dad did the dishes together while Lisa helped me open the rest of my presents, and Grandma took about 100 pictures. When it was time to go home, Mom and Dad stood by their cars talking for 10 more minutes about my school schedule and summer plans. Looking back at everything that happened, I realized I was actually happy with how our family worked now. The accident was terrible, and I'd never be grateful for Mom getting hurt, but it forced everyone to stop being so angry and start being honest. Our family didn't look like other families with everyone in one house, but it was still ours, just different from before. Starting high school felt less scary knowing I had both parents cheering for me, even from different sides of the auditorium. The secrets and anger had almost destroyed everything, but we chose to forgive each other and talk about the hard stuff, and that saved us. Every Tuesday when Dad picked me up for dinner and every Sunday when Mom made pancakes, I felt more whole than I had in years. Well, thanks for hanging out with me while I rambled through all those moments. Hope my questions didn't get too out there. Always a blast chatting with you, and I'll see you next time. Subscribe for more content like this.